You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need revenge to be remembered. And you don't need to beg anyone to see your value, because the deepest pain a person can feel is not what you say when you leave. It is who you become after you're gone. There is a quiet power in walking away with grace, a thunder in your silence, a lesson in your absence. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop shrinking to be loved, when you stop watering places where nothing grows, that is when the truth begins to ache. Let him remember you as the woman who loved deeply but chose herself. Let him feel the weight of your laughter no longer filling the room, your kindness no longer saving him, your presence no longer making his world softer. You do not punish him with bitterness, you educate him with your growth. You rise, you heal, you shine. And one day when he realizes that the peace he lost was you, that the strength he leaned on was you, that the love he took for granted was you, you will already be too full of life to look back. Because the most unforgettable pain is losing someone who finally learned they were enough. Silence speaks louder than words, because silence is not empty, it is intentional. It is the moment when you choose peace over proving a point, dignity over drama, and self-respect over being understood by someone who has already decided not to listen. In daily life, we are taught that if we don't speak up, we lose. But the truth is, many people don't lose because they stayed quiet, they lose because they kept explaining themselves to the wrong ears. Think of the woman who keeps sending long messages after being ignored, trying to clarify her intentions, her pain, her love. Every message makes her smaller, not because her feelings are wrong, but because her worth does not require translation. Silence would have said, I know who I am, and I will not chase someone who cannot see me. Silence is powerful because it removes access. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding what was draining you. In everyday life, notice how arguments escalate when both sides talk endlessly, repeating the same pain in different words. But the moment one person goes quiet, not in anger but in control, the energy shifts. The other person feels it. They feel the absence of noise where attention used to be. Silence forces reflection where words invite resistance. Words give people something to fight against. Silence leaves them alone with their thoughts. In relationships, silence becomes a mirror. When you stop calling, stop checking, stop asking why you weren't chosen, the other person finally hears themselves. They replay conversations in their mind. They remember how you showed up, how you waited, how you cared. Your silence becomes a question they can't escape. Why did someone who loved me so deeply walk away so calmly? That question hurts more than accusations ever could. Accusations give people a chance to defend themselves. Silence gives them nowhere to hide. In the workplace, silence also speaks. Think of the employee who is constantly overlooked yet always over-explaining their worth, listing achievements, seeking validation. Then imagine the moment they stop. They do their work with excellence, stop begging for recognition, and let their consistency speak. Suddenly, their absence from conversations is noticed. Their quiet professionalism becomes loud. People begin to realize the value they took for granted. Silence teaches others how to treat you by showing them what access to you looks like when it's no longer free. Silence is not weakness, it is restraint. It is knowing you could say 1,000 things but choosing not to because your peace matters more than winning an argument. In daily life, when someone disrespects you and expects a reaction, silence disrupts their expectations. They wanted your anger, your tears, your energy. Instead, they receive nothing. And nothing unsettles a person more than realizing they no longer have power over your emotions. Your quiet becomes a boundary they didn't see coming. There is also healing in silence. When life hurts, when betrayal cuts deep, words often fail to capture the weight of what you feel. Talking too soon can reopen wounds. Silence gives you space to breathe, to feel without performing your pain for others. In everyday moments, sitting alone with a cup of tea, walking without music, staring out a window, silence allows clarity to rise. You begin to understand that not everything requires a response, and not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Silence teaches patience. When you stop rushing to be understood, you learn to stand firmly in who you are. People who truly value you will seek understanding without forcing you to explain yourself repeatedly. Those who don't will fade away, confused by your calm. In daily life, notice how children test boundaries with noise, tantrums, demands, but calm authority, quiet, steady, present, commands more respect than shouting ever could. Adults are no different. We respond to calm certainty more than emotional chaos. Silence also protects your future. Every word spoken in anger can become a regret. Silence saves you from explaining words you never meant, apologizing for reactions you never wanted to give. It allows you to respond from wisdom rather than impulse. In everyday interactions, when someone pushes your buttons, silence gives you time. Time to choose growth. Time to choose self-respect. Time to remember that you don't owe everyone a reaction just because they triggered you. Silence changes how people remember you. Loud exits are forgotten, quiet departures linger. When you leave without drama, without begging, without announcing your pain, people feel the absence more deeply. They replay your quiet strength in their mind. In daily life, think of those moments when someone simply stopped showing up. No explanation, no confrontation, just distance. That absence made you think more than any argument ever did. Silence is where power rests. It is the pause that reveals confidence. It is the decision to let actions, growth, and peace speak for you. When you stop explaining, stop reacting, stop chasing closure from people who benefit from your confusion, your silence becomes a language of self-worth. And the world understands it clearly. Self-worth is the strongest goodbye because it does not slam doors or raise voices. It closes chapters with dignity. It is the moment you realize that staying where you are undervalued is more painful than leaving what feels familiar. In daily life, many people remain in relationships, jobs, and friendships not because they are happy, but because they are afraid of being alone. They tell themselves, at least I have something. But self-worth whispers a harder truth. Having nothing is better than being treated like nothing. Walking away with self-respect is not loss, it is liberation. When you choose self-worth, your goodbye does not need an explanation. You stop listing everything you endured, stop reminding others of how much you gave. You understand that people who wanted to understand you already did, and those who didn't never will. Think of the woman who stays up late rewriting messages in her head, wondering how to say things better so she won't be misunderstood. The day she chooses self-worth, she realizes she does not need better words. She needs better boundaries. Her silence, her departure, her refusal to accept less becomes her final statement. Self-worth changes how you leave broken spaces. You don't leave angrily, you leave clearly. In everyday life, there are moments when someone crosses the same line again and again. Each time, you forgive, adjust, and make excuses for them. Self-worth is the day you stop adjusting. It is the quiet realization that love without respect is emotional debt. You may love deeply, but you finally love yourself enough not to stay where love cost you your peace. In relationships, self-worth is the strongest goodbye because it does not seek revenge. It seeks alignment. You don't walk away to make someone regret losing you. You walk away because you refuse to lose yourself. Imagine someone who only shows effort when they feel you slipping away. Self-worth sees through this pattern. It says, I will not beg for consistency. Leaving becomes an act of self-trust, not punishment. And that kind of goodbye echoes longer than tears ever could. In friendships, self-worth speaks when you are always the one calling, checking in, showing up. You notice how your absence is never chased, how your presence is always expected. The strongest goodbye is not announcing your departure, but gradually choosing people who choose you back. In daily life, when you stop overgiving, some people disappear. Self-worth understands this is not abandonment, it is clarity. The goodbye happens the moment you stop forcing connection. At work, self-worth becomes the goodbye you never imagined you'd have the courage to make. It is the employee who works overtime without recognition, who accepts disrespect in the name of loyalty. Self-worth arrives when you realize your skills are not a favor you owe anyone. You stop shrinking your talents to make others comfortable. Whether you stay or leave, you carry yourself differently. Your posture changes. Your voice steadies. And even if you walk away knowing your value does not end where that job did. Self-worth teaches you that not every goodbye needs closure. Some people will never admit they hurt you. Some will never apologize. Self-worth says, I don't need your acknowledgement to move forward. In everyday life, waiting for apologies can keep you stuck in the same place emotionally. The The strongest goodbye is when you stop waiting for validation and start validating yourself. You stop reopening wounds just to explain them again. Choosing self-worth also means releasing the need to be remembered fondly by those who did not treat you kindly. You accept that some people will rewrite the story to avoid accountability. Self-worth lets them. You know who you were. You know what you gave. You don't need to defend your character to people who benefited from misunderstanding you. Your goodbye is calm because your conscience is clear. Self-worth transforms pain into posture. When you leave with dignity, you don't carry bitterness, you carry lessons. In daily life, this shows up in how you no longer tolerate mixed signals, LF efforts, or conditional respect. You stop asking, why wasn't I enough, and start saying, I deserved more. That shift alone is a powerful goodbye to every version of you that accepted less than you deserved. Self-worth is the strongest goodbye because it closes the door without hatred. It is the decision to stop negotiating your value. It is the courage to choose yourself even when your heart still cares. And when you walk away with self-respect, you don't need to announce your strength. Your absence explains everything. Growth is not revenge because revenge keeps your eyes locked on the person who hurt you, while growth turns your face back toward your own life. Revenge says, look at me now, but growth says, I finally see myself. In daily life, many people try to heal by proving something. Posting success to make someone jealous, smiling loudly to hide the ache, forcing happiness so others will feel regret. But that kind of living is still a reaction. Growth begins the day you stop performing your healing and start actually living it. The strongest moment is not when they notice you changed, but when you realize you no longer care if they do. Growth feels quiet at first. It looks like waking up earlier to work on yourself instead of replaying old conversations in your head. It looks like choosing rest over revenge scrolling, choosing discipline over dramatic speeches you'll never send. In everyday life, when someone betrays you, the easiest thing is to want them to feel the same pain. Growth asks a harder question. Why should my future suffer just to punish my past? That question alone is freedom. Freedom from emotional prisons built on resentment. When growth replaces revenge, your energy comes back to you. Think of how exhausting it is to hold anger, to rehearse comebacks, to imagine how you'll one day prove your worth. Growth releases that burden in daily routines. This shows up when you redirect that energy into learning a new skill, improving your health, rebuilding confidence. The moment you start investing in yourself, the people who hurt you slowly lose importance. Not because they changed, but because you did. Growth also changes how pain speaks to you. Instead of asking, how do I make them regret losing me? You ask, what is this pain teaching me about my boundaries? In relationships, growth means recognizing patterns you once ignored. You stop blaming yourself for staying too long and start honoring yourself for leaving when you finally understood. That shift is not revenge, it is wisdom earned through experience. In daily life, you see growth when someone chooses consistency over comparison. Instead of watching the life of the person who hurt them, they build a life so full that curiosity fades. They go to the gym, not to be seen, but to feel strong again. They study, not to impress, but to expand. They heal, not to prove a point, but to breathe easier. Growth is the freedom of no longer explaining your choices to people who are not walking your path. Growth teaches you that peace is louder than payback. Revenge wants applause. Growth wants alignment. Think of a person who once underestimated you. Revenge would be confronting them with your success. Growth is walking past them without the urge to stop. In everyday moments when you no longer rehearse what you'd say if you saw them again, that is freedom. When your happiness doesn't depend on their regret, that is growth. Growth also reshapes your identity. You stop defining yourself as the one who was hurt and start seeing yourself as the one who survived and evolved. In daily life, this shows up when you no longer introduce your story through pain. You don't say, this happened to me every time you talk about yourself. You say, this is what I am building now. Growth moves your narrative forward. In friendships and family dynamics, growth is choosing emotional maturity over emotional battles. You stop trying to teach lessons to people who refuse to learn. You understand that some people are committed to misunderstanding you. Growth allows you to walk away without carrying the urge to correct the story. You realize your truth does not need witnesses to remain true. Growth brings discipline into places where chaos once lived. You start saying no without guilt. You stop entertaining situations that confuse you. In everyday life, this looks like leaving conversations that drain you, declining invitations that don't align with your values, choosing solitude over toxic familiarity. Revenge would be staying connected just to be seen doing better. Growth is disconnecting to become better. Growth frees you from emotional time travel. You stop revisiting moments that cannot be changed. You learn that the past is a lesson, not a life sentence. In daily habits, this means focusing on what you can control today. Your attitude, your effort, your healing. You realize that becoming stronger is more satisfying than watching someone else fall. Growth is the moment you understand that your success does not need an audience. Your healing does not need approval. Your joy does not need validation. When you grow, you stop waiting for someone to notice your absence because you are too present in your own life, too busy becoming, too grounded in your own worth, too free to carry the weight of proving anything to anyone. Your absence reveals your value because presence is often misunderstood until it is gone. When you are always available, always forgiving, always showing up, people confuse your consistency with permanence. In daily life, think of the friend who is always there to listen, to help, to adjust plans, to carry emotion. I'll wait for others. Their effort becomes background noise, not because it lacks value, but because it is never threatened with absence. The moment they step back, the silence left behind begins to speak louder than all the times they were taken for granted. Absence creates contrast. When you are no longer there to smooth over problems, to offer comfort, to make things easier, people are forced to feel the weight of what you carried for them. In relationships, your absence reveals how much emotional labor you provided. Suddenly, they notice the warmth missing from conversations, the stability gone from chaos, the understanding no one else offers the way you did. Your value becomes visible not through words, but through the discomfort created by your absence in everyday life. We rarely miss things we assume will always be there. Like electricity during a power outage, value is recognized when function stops. When you stop calling first, stop checking in, stop explaining yourself, the imbalance becomes clear. Some people will feel confused, others irritated, and some deeply unsettled. Not because you were weak, but because your presence was doing more work than anyone realized. Absence reveals the truth without accusation. Your absence also teaches people how they treated you. When you leave quietly, without blame or drama, others replay moments they once ignored. They remember how you showed patience when they didn't deserve it, how you stayed when it was easier to leave, how you gave grace when it was never returned. In daily moments, this reflection doesn't happen when you argue or plead. It happens when there is nothing left to react to. At work, your absence reveals your value in powerful ways. The employee who quietly handled responsibilities beyond their role is often noticed only after they step away. Deadlines are missed, systems fail, and confusion spreads. DS. Suddenly, your name is mentioned in rooms where you were once overlooked. Not because you demanded recognition, but because your absence exposed how much you contributed without applause. Presence was assumed, absence became evidence. Absence also reveals who valued you and who only valued what you provided. In daily life, when you step back, some people reach out with genuine concern, while others disappear entirely. This is not rejection, it is revelation. Your absence filters your circle without confrontation. Those who cared about you will feel the distance. Those who benefited from you will feel inconvenience. Both reactions tell the truth. In relationships, your absence removes the illusion of control. When someone believes you will always stay no matter how they behave, they stop being careful with your heart. Absence disrupts that comfort. It forces them to confront the reality that access to you was a privilege, not a guarantee. The strongest realization often comes too late, when the space you left can no longer be filled. Your absence also gives you clarity. When you step away, you begin to see how much you tolerated in the name of love, loyalty, or patience. In daily life, distance sharpens perspective. You realize how often you minimized your needs, how often you stayed silent to keep peace, how often you accepted less because you were afraid to lose people. Absence doesn't just reveal your value to others, it reveals your value to yourself. Absence is not abandonment, it is self-respect. It is choosing not to be constantly accessible to people who never prioritized you. In daily routines, this shows up when you stop answering immediately, stop rearranging your life for others, stop being emotionally available to those who only show up when it suits them. The space you create becomes a boundary, and boundaries expose how people truly feel about you. Your absence challenges entitlement. When you no longer show up the way you used to, people realize how much they relied on your energy, your kindness, your presence. Some will try to pull you back with guilt, others with sudden attention. Absence teaches you to recognize the difference between being missed and being valued. Being missed is about loss, being valued is about respect. Absence also restores your power. When you are not constantly present, you stop being predictable. In daily life, predictability often leads to neglect. When people know you will always forgive, always return, always stay, they stop cherishing you. Absence reintroduces consequence, not as punishment, but as truth. Your absence becomes a lesson without words. It tells people what you are carrying, what you are giving, and what they fail to protect. It reminds them that love, effort, and loyalty are not endless resources. And while some will realize this too late, your absence will have already done its work. Quietly, clearly, and honestly. You don't need closure because closure often asks the wrong people to give you peace they never protected. Clarity comes when you stop waiting for explanations that only reopen wounds. In daily life, many people stay emotionally stuck because they believe healing begins with answers. They replay conversations, wait for apologies, imagine one last talk that will finally make everything make sense. But clarity arrives when you realize that silence, inconsistency, and repeated disrespect already answered every question. If they wanted to, they would. Is not cruelty. It is clarity. Think of someone who keeps checking their phone, hoping for a message that explains why they were left confused. Closure tells them to wait. Clarity tells them to move. Closure says one more conversation. Clarity says one more boundary. In everyday moments, clarity looks like deleting drafts you never sent and choosing sleep over emotional spirals. It looks like accepting that confusion is not love's language. Love is clear, effort is clear, respect is unmistakable. Clarity frees you from emotional bargaining. Instead of asking, why wasn't I enough? You begin asking, why did I accept less? That shift changes everything. In daily life, clarity shows up when you stop defending someone's behavior to friends. You no longer say, they're just busy or they didn't mean it. You say nothing because you finally see the pattern. Clarity is recognizing patterns without needing to confront them repeatedly. You don't need closure because people who hurt you often don't tell the truth. They tell the version that protects them. Waiting for closure is like asking someone who broke the mirror to explain your reflection. Clarity is realizing that the truth has already shown itself through actions. In relationships, clarity is noticing who shows up when it's inconvenient, who listens when it's uncomfortable, who stays consistent when emotions fluctuate. No explanation can override behavior. In daily work life, clarity looks like understanding why you feel exhausted. It's not the workload, it's the lack of appreciation. You don't need a meeting to explain why you feel undervalued. You already know. Clarity helps you stop overworking to prove worth. It whispers your value does not increase with exhaustion. That realization alone becomes a turning point. Clarity also protects your future. When you keep seeking closure, you reopen doors that should remain closed. In daily life, this happens when you answer late-night messages from people who once dismissed you. Closure tempts you to revisit. Clarity reminds you why you left. If it cost me my peace once, it will cost me again is not bitterness, it is wisdom earned. You don't need closure to forgive. Forgiveness does not require understanding every detail. It requires accepting reality. Clarity allows forgiveness without reconciliation. In everyday moments, clarity means you can wish someone well without inviting them back into your life. It means you stop confusing kindness with access. I forgive you does not mean you can hurt me again. Clarity strengthens your self-respect. When you stop asking for explanations, you stop placing your healing in someone else's hands. In daily routines, this shows up when you choose growth over gossip, silence over arguments, discipline over emotional chasing. You realize that chasing clarity from others keeps you trapped, but creating clarity for yourself sets you free. Clarity teaches you to trust your intuition. That uneasy feeling you ignored, that discomfort you explained away, that doubt you silenced, those were answers. In daily life, clarity is listening the first time instead of learning the hard way repeatedly. It is saying, I felt unseen and that feeling matters. You stop gaslighting yourself to keep others comfortable. You don't need closure because clarity closes doors quietly. There is power in deciding without announcement. In everyday interactions, clarity looks like no longer responding to mixed signals. It looks like choosing people who choose you back. It looks like walking away without needing the other person to agree with your decision. Clarity also reshapes your self-talk. Instead of saying, I hope they understand me someday, you say, I understand myself now. In daily life, this changes how you show up. You speak with confidence. You set boundaries without apology. You stop over-explaining your needs. I deserve clarity becomes a standard, not a wish. When clarity replaces closure, you stop romanticizing potential. You see reality as it is, not as it could have been. In daily mom. NTS, this saves you from returning to situations that once drained you. You stop falling in love with promises and start respecting patterns. Clarity teaches you that consistency is the loudest form of commitment. You don't need closure to move forward. Movement itself creates clarity. Each step away from confusion brings peace. In daily life, this looks like focusing on your health, your goals, your healing instead of unanswered questions. You realize that peace does not come from knowing everything. It comes from accepting enough. Clarity is choosing yourself without needing permission. It is trusting what you saw, felt, and experienced. It is understanding that not everything broken needs to be fixed. Some things are meant to be left behind as proof of how far you've come. Healing changes the narrative because it turns the story from victimhood into victory. When you heal, you no longer allow past pain to define your present or dictate your future. In daily life, many people replay the same hurtful memories over and over, believing that recounting them will somehow lead to understanding or justice. They tell the story of how they were wronged, how they were ignored, how they were taken for granted, and in doing so, they remain trapped in a chapter that no longer serves them. Healing interrupts that loop. It says, I am more than what happened to me. It transforms the narrative from a tale of suffering into a testament of resilience. Healing changes the narrative because it shifts perspective. In everyday life, consider someone who has been betrayed by a friend or partner. Before healing, their story centers on betrayal, loss, and heartbreak. They recount every detail to anyone who will listen, seeking validation, seeking sympathy, seeking closure. After healing, they tell the story differently. They speak of lessons learned, of boundaries established, of self-respect reclaimed. The story is no longer about what was done to them. It is about what they became because of it. Healing reframes pain as empowerment, suffering as education, and loss as liberation. Healing changes the narrative because it changes how you see yourself. When people hurt us, they often leave behind a version of ourselves we struggle to recognize, insecure, hesitant, unsure of our worth. Healing restores the original author of the story, you. In daily life, this is seen when someone starts to reclaim habits, routines, and passions that were abandoned during periods of suffering. They return to hobbies that were neglected, speak truths they were silenced from saying, and walk into spaces they avoided. Healing allows them to reclaim authorship of their own story. They are no longer a character in someone else's plot. They are the protagonist of their own life. Healing changes the narrative because it transforms language. Before healing, we use words filled with blame, anger, and self-doubt. We say, I was hurt, I was left behind, I didn't matter. Healing does not erase the past, but it allows us to speak with a different power. We say, I survived, I chose myself, I am enough. In daily life, this shows up in how a person communicates after trauma or betrayal. They are calmer, clearer, and more intentional. Their words no longer hand company. Control over to those who caused pain. Their words define their growth. Healing changes the narrative because it teaches empathy, not resentment. In everyday life, someone who was once consumed by anger may now see the complexity of human behavior. They recognize that pain often drives poor decisions, that ignorance can masquerade as malice, that inconsistency does not always equal intentional harm. Healing allows someone to hold boundaries without bitterness, to care without compromising, and to love without losing themselves. Their story evolves from one of retribution to one of understanding, wisdom, and grace. Healing changes the narrative because it removes dependence on external validation. Before healing, people often seek acknowledgement of their suffering to feel justified. They want others to admit wrongdoing, apologize, or recognize their pain. After healing, the story is no longer dependent on others. In daily life, this is when someone stops seeking recognition for how hard they fought, for how much they endured, or for how much they grew. Healing says, I know my worth. I don't need anyone else to confirm it. The narrative shifts from they hurt me to I am stronger than I ever imagined. Healing changes the narrative because it builds resilience into the fabric of identity. Life will continue to challenge, disappoint, and test, but a healed person carries lessons instead of scars. In daily life, this might be someone who has faced repeated rejection, romantic, professional, or social, but who continues to move forward with confidence. They no longer allow each failure to define them. Instead, each setback becomes a chapter of growth, each disappointment a stepping stone. The narrative evolves from fear and fragility into courage and determination. Healing changes the narrative because it inspires others without intention. In everyday life, people notice the difference. Friends, family, and even strangers are drawn to the energy of someone who has healed. Their story becomes a beacon of possibility, that pain can be transformed, that loss can be redeemed, that endings can become beginnings. Healing turns personal suffering into universal lessons, and without saying a single word about the past, the healed person demonstrates triumph. Healing changes the narrative because it reclaims time. Before healing, time is spent revisiting wounds, replaying old arguments, or imagining alternate endings. After healing, time is reclaimed for creation, for growth, for living fully. In daily routines, this shows up when someone who once cried over someone else's betrayal now dedicates energy to new projects, new relationships, and new opportunities. The narrative moves from stagnation to momentum, from regression to forward motion. Healing changes the narrative because it transforms identity from reactive to intentional. Someone who once defined themselves by what happened to them now defines themselves by what they choose to do. In everyday life, a person may no longer define themselves as the one who was abandoned, but as the one who rebuilt, who chose herself, who created a life beyond anyone else's permission. Healing gives them agency over their story, and in that agency lies freedom, strength, and beauty. Healing changes the narrative because it allows for joy without guilt. After trauma or heartbreak, many people feel hesitant to embrace happiness. Healing teaches that joy is not betrayal, it is reclamation. In daily life, this appears when someone smiles freely again, laughs without remembering the past, or experiences love without fear. The story of their life becomes about living fully rather than merely surviving. Healing transforms every sentence from pain into empowerment, from doubt into courage, from limitatio into possibility. Healing changes the narrative because it turns endings into beginnings. What once felt like a door closing painfully now becomes an invitation to step into a larger story, a deeper self, a more authentic life. In everyday life, people may notice healed individuals thriving in spaces they once feared, pursuing goals they once doubted, and speaking truths they once withheld. Every action rewrites the past, reshapes perception, and demonstrates that healing is not just recovery, it is the creation of a new, powerful, and inspiring narrative. Peace is the ultimate power move because it requires more strength than anger, more discipline than revenge, and more clarity than explanation. In daily life, many people chase power through confrontation, loud declarations, or constant validation, believing that proving themselves is the way to be respected. But peace is quiet, patient, and unshakable. It does not react to provocation. It does not need acknowledgement. It simply exists as a force that commands attention without effort. Choosing peace over reaction signals strength, intelligence, and self-control in ways that words or aggression never could. In relationships, Peace is the ultimate power move because it allows you to detach from chaos without abandoning integrity. Think of someone who has been repeatedly hurt by a partner's inconsistency. The easy reaction is to fight, argue, or manipulate situations to force recognition. But peace means walking through the same challenges with calm composure, protecting your energy, and refusing to engage in unnecessary conflict. In daily life, this shows up when you respond with silence instead of anger, with understanding instead of accusation, and with patience instead of panic. Those who sought to control you through drama suddenly realize that they no longer have access to your emotions the way they once did. Peace is powerful because it disarms others. Anger invites resistance, fear invites suspicion, and manipulation invites retaliation. But peace leaves no foothold for attack. In everyday interactions, when someone tries to provoke you and you remain unshaken, they are forced to confront themselves. Their insults echo against the walls of your calm. Their negativity ricochets off your stability. In that moment, your presence alone speaks louder than any argument. People instinctively respect and even fear the control you demonstrate by not reacting to what once controlled you. Peace is also a strategic advantage. In daily life, consider the workplace where tension and competition often fuel drama. The colleague who remains calm under pressure, who does not gossip, who does not retaliate when slighted, commands respect without making a scene. Others may exhaust themselves trying to provoke them or test their limits, but peace allows a person to operate with clarity, efficiency, and authority. It is the silent signal that control belongs to the composed, that influence flows through restraint, and that power is measured by presence, not noise. Peace amplifies clarity and decision-making. When you are at war with yourself, reacting impulsively, every choice is clouded by emotion. Healing, growth, and understanding cannot flourish in chaos. In daily life, this can be seen when someone takes a step back from a toxic relationship or a draining friendship and approaches the situation with calm intention. Instead of lashing out or making decisions in anger, they consider their needs, boundaries, and long-term goals. That clarity is a form of power that cannot be measured by external validation, only by the results it produces. Peace also commands influence without control. In everyday life, consider parents guiding children. A parent who screams or threatens may see immediate compliance, but a parent who remains calm, consistent, and understanding inspires respect, trust, and lasting obedience. Similarly, in adult relationships, being the calm presence in storms creates influence not through force but through integrity. People who understand this recognize that true power lies in mastering oneself, not manipulating others. Peace transforms adversity into opportunity. When life challenges you with betrayal, loss, or failure, reacting impulsively may offer temporary relief but perpetuates cycles of pain. Choosing peace instead allows for learning, adaptation, and resilience. In daily life, this is someone who loses a job and instead of lashing out or dwelling in despair, invests time in skill development, networking, and personal growth. Their calm approach opens doors that chaos and anger would have slammed shut. Peace is strategic patience that creates results unseen by those chasing immediate reactions. Peace strengthens boundaries. It is not passive or weak, it is deliberate and protective. In everyday interactions, peace is saying no. Without guilt, walking away from people who drain energy without confrontation, and refusing to justify every choice you make. By not reacting to provocation or engaging in unnecessary arguments, you demonstrate that your energy is yours to protect. People who previously took advantage of your reactions are forced to reconsider their approach. Peace becomes a living boundary, unbreachable yet undeniable. Peace radiates influence through consistency. In daily life, notice those individuals who are calm in chaos, patient in conflict, and composed in uncertainty. People are drawn to them, respect them, and often emulate their behavior. Peace becomes contagious, inspiring others to rise above pettiness, to respond with integrity, and to focus on what truly matters. Your influence grows not because you demand attention, but because your stability commands it naturally. Peace is also a shield against regret. When you react impulsively, you risk saying words or taking actions you cannot undo. Choosing peace allows time to process, reflect, and respond intentionally. In daily life, this is evident when someone refrains from sending an angry message, instead choosing to sleep. on it, think it through, and respond calmly if necessary. That restraint preserves dignity, maintains relationships, and demonstrates mastery over emotion, turning potentially destructive moments into demonstrations of strength. Ultimately, peace is the ultimate power move because it reclaims control over your life. It is not about others noticing your calm. It is about reclaiming yourself from the turbulence of reaction. In daily life, peace allows you to prioritize your energy, focus on your growth, and rise above those who attempt to diminish you. When anger, chaos, and drama attempt to pull you back, your calm becomes an unshakable fortress, a statement that nothing external can dictate your inner state. Peace is not passive. It is deliberate, strategic, and profoundly influential, and it signals that true power has never been about control over others. It has always been mastery over yourself. And now, my friends, let us pause and take a moment to feel the weight of everything we have uncovered together, because what we have spoken is not just advice, it is a declaration. You are not here to shrink, to explain, or to be anyone's shadow. You are here to rise, to claim every ounce of your brilliance, to walk with the dignity and strength that the world cannot take from you. Remember, life will test you. It will try to pull you into its chaos, to convince you that your worth is negotiable, that your peace is fragile, and that your voice is small. But you are not small. You were never small. You are a force of nature, a storm wrapped in grace, and the power within you is immeasurable. You must understand that the strongest moves in life are quiet, deliberate, and rooted in self-respect. You do not need to shout to be heard. You do not need to prove your worth to anyone who has already forgotten it. There is a fire in you that no one can extinguish, a light that no darkness can dim, and a life that is yours to sculpt with courage, vision, and unwavering self-love. The world will offer distractions, chaos, and pain, but remember this: nothing outside of you can diminish what is inside you. As Maya Angelou once whispered to the world through her spirit, you may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. Hold that truth close, because it is the foundation upon which your freedom, your dignity, and your power stand. Every step you take from today forward must be intentional. Walk away from what diminishes you. Step into spaces that amplify your greatness. Speak words that honor your soul. Stand tall even when the world does not acknowledge your worth, because recognition is secondary to the truth of your being. The pain you endured is not a chain, it is a teacher. The heartbreak is not a mark of weakness, it is the brush that paints the masterpiece of your resilience. Every trial, every betrayal, every moment of doubt is a note in the symphony of your emergence. Let it play fully, let it fuel you, let it guide you into the life you were destined to claim. And when they look for you, they will find someone transformed, not someone bitter, not someone broken, but someone who has harnessed her experiences, her pain, and her love to create power. Not through confrontation, but through quiet dominance. Not through anger, but through peace. Not through noise, but through unwavering self-belief. When you walk away, let it be with grace. When you heal, let it be with intensity. When you grow, let it be unapologetically. The world is not ready for the magnitude of your presence, and that is exactly why your emergence will leave echoes that linger far beyond your leaving. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for validation. Do not wait for the world to catch up to the brilliance that is already within you. As the great voices before us have always proclaimed, you alone are enough, just as you are. Do not shrink to make others comfortable. Do not bend to soothe insecurities that are not yours to carry. You are here to dominate your narrative, to protect your energy, and to shine in ways that others cannot replicate. Your silence will teach lessons, your absence will leave imprints, and your peace will be a power no one can touch. Rise above the expectation that you must explain yourself, that you must seek closure, or that you must earn love from those who are blind to your worth. Today, claim clarity. Claim growth, claim self-worth, claim freedom. Walk forward knowing that every step away from what diminishes you is a step toward your magnificence. Carry yourself like royalty because you are the queen of your story, the architect of your destiny, and the embodiment of resilience that inspires generations. Stand firm, breathe deep, and know this: no one can take from you what you have claimed for yourself. You are your power, you are your peace, you are unstoppable.